Hey guys, tonight we slip into the bustling hum of an old marketplace, lanterns swaying like restless fireflies, smoke curling from skewers of lamb, and the air thick with both spice and suspicion. You wander through the din, sandals scraping cobblestones, and though every stall cries out for your coin, dates piled high, carpets unfurled like trapped sunsets, it's the rumour drifting between the merchants that hooks you. Someone, it's whispered, is selling the moon. Not selling a mirror, not peddling a charm, but the actual moon. And you, being exactly the kind of traveller who stays up way too late with strange ideas, find yourself leaning closer, hungry to hear more. You probably won't survive this kind of curiosity in real life. But hey, that's why we're safe together in a bedtime story. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time down in the comments. I'm always fascinated to see who else is wandering under these stars with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bazaar stretches wide like a sea of tents, each fluttering with the wind of 100 haggled breaths. You trudge between stalls where children chase one another with figs, and the smell of cardamom mixes with camel sweat. Traders squabble over copper weights, clinking coins like wind chimes, while fortune tellers shake jars of bones and mutter about destiny. A good reminder, history tells us that medieval markets weren't just about trade. They were also where news travelled fastest. Like a living internet. Imagine the town crier crossed with TikTok, minus the filters. And here, in the chaos, one particular merchant catches your eye. He's dressed no better than the rest, but there's something nervous about his gaze, something that says he's not satisfied with just barley, wool, and dates. He overhears the whispers. A certain peddler arrived at dusk, offering something beyond rare spices or polished swords. The merchant's hand tightens around his purse. His mind churns. He's tired of being one face among thousands, tired of scratching profits from salt and figs. If the moon can be bought, maybe he can finally stand above everyone else, literally. You weave closer to the rumour, and the tale grows taller. Some claim the peddler carried the glow of the heavens in his bag. Others swear he spoke to the stars in their own language. Of course, in any marketplace. Tall tales are currency too. Historians still argue whether bazaars acted as reliable news networks or were closer to tavern gossip gone feral. But one thing is certain, once a story sparks in the crowd, it spreads faster than wildfire through dry reeds. You pause at a rug seller's stall where patterns spiral like mazes and overhear two old men grumbling about the moon dealer. Bah! Spits one, stroking his beard. Next he'll sell the clouds. The other chuckles, teeth missing. Wouldn't mind owning the rain, eh? That's the thing about strange stories. They always find believers and mockers in equal measure. Now, here's a quirky tidbit to tuck under your pillow. In 16th century Europe, con men once sold the Brooklyn Bridge, again and again, to gullible newcomers. Okay, it wasn't the moon, but you see the theme. People love to believe in impossible bargains if the price sounds right. Our merchant, though, isn't laughing. He's calculating. If such a claim could be true, he wants it before anyone else dares. The moon itself hangs low tonight, a silver coin resting on the dark palm of the sky. You tilt your head, and for just a breath, it does look close enough to grasp, like it's listening in on the whole joke. The merchant's pulse quickens. What if, just what if, that glowing sphere is already half-owned, waiting for the right signature? You follow him deeper into the bazaar, past vendors shouting about almonds and oil lamps. His sandals slap harder now, determination in every step. The laughter of the crowd fades as he slips into a shadowed quarter where the rumour sharpens into presence. And here, your stomach tightens, not from bad dates or spoiled goat milk, but from that thrill of seeing someone edge toward a decision that might unravel their life. We've all been there, haven't we? One bad impulse buy, whether it's that treadmill that became a coat rack or, in this case, the moon. Except this particular cart won't fit in a return policy. The merchant breathes deep, steadying himself. Somewhere ahead, beneath a crooked canopy, a figure waits. You can almost feel the chill where the ordinary world ends and the impossible one begins. Lantern light flickers across a space where bargains are made that will ripple far beyond this crowded night. And though your common sense whispers to turn back, the story has you now. You follow the merchant forward, step by step, into the possibility that the moon itself might change hands tonight. You slip with the merchant into the darker veins of the bazaar, where the torches burn lower and the scents grow stranger. Herbs too bitter to cook with, jars of powders that fizz at a touch, fabrics, dyed colours you swear don't exist in daylight. Here, shadows stretch long, swallowing laughter and replacing it with murmurs. It's the sort of place where bargains are whispered, not shouted, and where the promise of something impossible feels oddly at home. And then you see him, the peddler. He's not tall, not draped in finery, not glowing like some celestial saint. No, he's hunched on a rug that looks like it's been dragged through 6 deserts and 3 arguments. His robe is plain, patched so many times that the patches themselves have patches, but his hood covers his face so completely that you can't tell whether he's young or old. His hands, though, those are pale and delicate as though they've never known labour. They move slowly, deliberately, like a cat pawing at string. And between those hands rests a clay jar that seems to breathe with its own light. The merchant freezes. You do too, because for a moment, against all reason, it really does look like the moon has been caught in that vessel, glowing not with fire but with something colder, softer, like stolen moonlight poured into clay. A trick, a miracle, a scam. Probably yes, probably all 3. But the peddler speaks before anyone can laugh. "It is yours," he says, voice a rasp like a reed flute, "if you dare to bear it." The merchant stammers, torn between scoffing and reaching for his purse. His voice cracks. "What is it really?" The peddler tilts his head. "What else but the moon? I found it wandering, alone. I placed it here for safekeeping. The skies are lighter now. Haven't you noticed? And the thing is, you glance up past the crooked canopy. The night does look thinner, as though someone smeared the stars with a thumb. Historians still argue whether ancient storytellers truly believed such cosmic theft could happen, or whether it was all allegory. But right now, allegory feels awfully convincing. The merchant leans closer, pupils wide, as the peddler continues. Everything has a price, even the heavens. Gold, yes, but more than gold, your word, your oath. For the moon obeys not coin alone. And here comes the quirky tidbit of the night. In the 12th century, there were real debates in Europe about whether landowners technically owned the air above their fields, all the way up to heaven. Imagine trying to charge rent for passing clouds. That's the energy this peddler exudes, utter confidence that the ridiculous is, in fact, enforceable. The merchant swallows hard. He's done haggling over goats and wheat all his life. This is different. He lowers himself to the rug, knees creaking. "What would you have of me?" The peddler's pale fingers drum the jar. 20 dinars, no more, and a mark of your hand, upon this scroll. He produces a scrap of parchment, ink shimmering faintly as though alive. Sign, and the moon is yours. It will follow you as surely as a dog to its master. You almost snort at that. Imagine walking the streets with the moon trotting behind you, tail wagging. But the merchant isn't laughing. He's sweating. 20 dinars is a fortune, but not impossible. He counts coins with trembling fingers, each clink sounding heavier than iron chains. The peddler does not touch the money yet. "And your word," he says softly. "Swear you will not squander the gift, nor deny its weight." The moon is patient, but it is not merciful. The merchant presses his palm to the scroll. Ink coils around his skin like ivy, leaving a mark that burns cold. He yanks his hand back with a hiss. The peddler only smiles, if that shadow where his mouth should be counts as a smile. The coins vanish into the folds of his robe, swallowed whole. The scroll curls shut with a sigh, and the jar. The jar is pushed gently toward the merchant. "Yours," says the peddler. "Keep it closed until you are alone. The moon hates to be gawked at. It grows shy. It grows to cross." And then, as if the deal were done, the peddler leans back into the shadow of his hood. No blessing, no warning, just the quiet scrape of his breath. The merchant clutches the jar, its glow spilling through the cracks of his fingers, and staggers up from the rug. He looks at you, wide-eyed, like a man who's jumped into a river and only just realised it has no bottom. One last detail, a practical one. Even in real history, medieval buyers often sealed contracts with hand marks rather than full signatures, because literacy was rare. That cold burn on the merchant's palm, that's his receipt, no refunds. He hurries away, clutching the moon, while behind him the peddler melts into the crowd, or maybe into nothing at all. You can't be sure. And now the question settles heavy in your chest. Has he just bought glory, or has he bought ruin? You keep walking with him, because you know the answer will not wait for long. You trail after the merchant as he ducks between stalls, jar hugged against his chest like a stolen loaf of bread. The glow leaks through the clay, thin veins of silver slithering across his robe. Every time he adjusts his grip, shadows twist strangely, bending in ways lanterns can't explain. People glance his way, frown, and then shake their heads, as if refusing to believe what their eyes just caught. The contract burns cold on his palm, a ghostly reminder of what he's just agreed to. He flexes his fingers, but the ink mark clings like frostbite. The merchant mutters, "Paper and coin are one thing, but an oaths have teeth." He's not wrong. In medieval law, sworn contracts were sacred. Historians still argue whether superstition enforced them more than legal courts, but either way, breaking one could cost you more than money. He ducks into a quieter lane, breath quick, and sits on a stone ledge. The jar hums faintly, like bees inside a hive. With shaky hands, he unties the string keeping the parchment rolled. By lamplight, you read the scrawl with him. "By my hand and my coin, I claim the moon. I shall keep it safe. I shall not deny its presence. I shall not seek to trade it away. In this binding, may the sky bear witness." A binding contract signed not just in ink, but in intention. That's the unsettling part. You can feel that the paper doesn't care whether courts exist. The words themselves seem alive, thrumming in your bones. The merchant's laugh is hollow. "I bought it. Me, not the Sultan, not the vizier, not the priests. Just me, a shopkeeper of raisins and barley." His laugh curdles into silence. He realizes the joke cuts both ways. Here's a quirky tidbit to lighten the mood. In the 19th century, a real-life American named Dennis Hope claimed ownership of the moon and started selling lunar real estate. He even sent a declaration to the United Nations, and no one replied, which he took as silent consent. Thousands of people bought deeds to lunar plots. So our merchant isn't the only fool in history to believe paperwork can snag the moon. The jar vibrates, a low thrum rattling his teeth. "It wants to be let out," he whispers, "but I mustn't, not until I'm home." He ties the lid shut with trembling fingers. Around you, the bazaar is thinned. Merchants pack away spices. Children herd goats toward pens, and the moon, or what's left of it in the sky, hangs dimmer than before. People pause, staring upward, murmuring, "Did it shrink? Did it fade? Or is it only your imagination?" The merchant staggers to his feet. No one must know yet. They'll laugh, or worse, they'll believe. He pulls his hood low, tucking the jar close, and begins the long walk toward his house. As you follow, your sandals scrape against cobblestones slick with spilled oil. The air grows colder, night insects still sing, but even their rhythm feels off, like the whole world has shifted one beat too slow. You remember the peddler's words, "The moon is patient, but not merciful." A pair of watchmen glance at the merchant as he hurries past. One nudges the other, whispering, "What's he hiding? Contraband?" The other shrugs, unconcerned. In truth, contraband was common. Salt smuggling, forbidden silks, even stolen relics. Owning the moon, though, that crime has no precedent. The merchant ducks into a side alley and leans against the wall, panting. His fingers tighten on the jar. "I can't show this to anyone. Not yet. They'll say it's witchcraft, or they'll take it. I must learn what it truly is first." And here lies the scholar's debate you've been waiting for. Historians still argue whether tales like this from 1001 Nights were meant as satire, mocking greedy men who think they can own what's untouchable, or as cautionary parables, warning against contracts with forces beyond human grasp. Either way, the merchant isn't laughing. His fear is real. He unfurls the parchment once more, reading the words by torchlight. The letters glimmer like silver ants crawling. He presses his marked palm against them, and the ink pulses in reply. The contract isn't just a record, it's alive, binding him in ways he cannot undo. The merchant groans, clutching his temples. Fool, I could have bought land, a caravan, even a vineyard, but no, I bought the sky. His laugh is brittle, echoing off stone walls. You want to comfort him, but what could you say? Return policy? Not likely. So instead, you walk with him as he pushes forward, the jar heavy in his arms, the parchment burning cold in his pocket, and the night growing thinner around you both. Somewhere above, the moon looks down, or doesn't. Maybe it's already in his hands. And the city, though it doesn't yet know, is about to feel the weight of his purchase. The merchant's house waits at the far edge of the city, tucked behind an olive grove that creaks with the night wind. You trail him along the last stretch of road, where lanterns thin and only stray dogs keep watch. His grip on the jar has gone from cautious to desperate. Every few steps, he glances down, as though worried the lid will spring open of its own accord. The faint glow keeps leaking out, painting his knuckles silver blue. He slips inside his courtyard gate, bolts it shut, and exhales in a long hiss. The jar he places on a low stone table, staring at it as though it might sprout legs and escape. His wife peeks from the doorway, hair loose, shawl wrapped hastily. "You're late," she says, frowning, "and you've brought something." The merchant stammers, "A gift, an investment." His voice cracks on the last word. He doesn't dare explain further, not yet. You follow him into the main room, where the air smells faintly of olive oil and last night's lentils. The jar sits there, humming like a caged swarm. The merchant swallows, his mouth dry, and unknots the lid string. Slowly, carefully. He lifts the clay cover. Light spills out, not torchlight, not firelight, but that familiar lunar glow, pale and cool. The whole room floods with it, shadows fleeing like frightened animals. His wife gasps, shielding her eyes. The merchant's heart thunders, because inside the jar isn't just brightness, it's a landscape. Craters etched like scars, plains of silver dust, and the slow, spinning curve of something impossibly far, impossibly close. It's the moon, or at least a piece of it, shrunken, folded, or tricked into this clay vessel. You lean closer, breath held. The glow kisses your face cold, like frost in summer. And though the room is shut tight, a wind stirs, the scent of stone, dry and endless, like a desert no man has crossed. His wife backs away. "What have you done?" The merchant trembles. "I've bought it." Now, here's the quirky fact to anchor us. In 1609, Galileo crafted one of the first telescopes powerful enough to map the moon's craters. People were horrified. Until then, they believed the moon was a perfect, divine sphere. Seeing scars shattered that illusion. Your merchant is having a similar shock, except he's got the whole thing in his living room. The jar vibrates, rattling the table. The merchant claps the lid back on, heart hammering. Darkness returns, save for a faint shimmer leaking through cracks. His wife stares at him like he's dragged home a corpse. "This is no goat," she says flatly. "No bag of barley. This is madness." He presses the jar to his chest. "It will make us rich. People will pay to see it, to touch it, to believe it." "Or to burn us," she snaps. And she's not wrong. In many times and places, strange relics were prized, but they also drew suspicion. Historians still argue whether medieval crowds feared marvels more than they adored them. Either way, possession was dangerous. The merchant paces the room, muttering. "It's mine now, by contract, by oath. No one can take it." Yet his eyes flick to the window, toward the faint hush of the sky. The moon's absence leaves the night uneasy, the stars brighter but lonelier. Dogs howl in the distance, as if unsettled by the imbalance. He sets the jar on a shelf, covers it with cloth, and forces himself to breathe steady. "Tomorrow," he whispers, "tomorrow, I'll decide how to use it. For now, it must rest." The household grows still. His wife retreats, muttering prayers under her breath. You stay near, listening to the jar hum faintly through the cloth, like a heart that doesn't belong in this world. And here's your light joke to soften the mood. Imagine explaining this to an insurance agent. "Yes, I'd like coverage for 1 moon, kept in a jar. Monthly premium? Don't worry, it glows on its own, no fire hazard." You glance once more at the merchant, pacing like a man who's won too much too fast. His eyes glimmer with fear and greed in equal measure. Tonight, the city sleeps under a thinner sky, but inside this small house, the moon waits, shrunken and restless, in the arms of a man who thinks ownership is the same as understanding. The morning sun drips gold over the rooftops, but inside the merchant's house, everything feels tilted. You shuffle after him as he wraps the jar in coarse cloth and cradles it like a newborn. He mutters to himself, pacing. His wife watches from the doorway, arms crossed, face a mask of suspicion. The jar hums faintly, though muffled, like a caged hornet's nest. "Today," the merchant whispers, "I must move it." And so begins the strangest errand of his life. He lifts the bundle, staggering under its weight. It feels heavier now, as though moonlight itself has thickened overnight. You trail behind as he pushes through the streets. Neighbours glance his way, puzzled at the awkward package glowing faintly even beneath the cloth. One woman pauses, shielding her eyes. "What on earth?" she begins, but the merchant hurries on, avoiding her stare. The city, meanwhile, seems unsettled. Fishermen complain that the tide pulled strangely at dawn. Boats scraping sand where water should have been deep. Dogs whine at shadows. A few children cry without reason. Of course, the skeptic in you wonders if it's all coincidence. Historians still argue whether communities in the past genuinely linked natural events to omens, or whether storytellers just stitched them together afterward. But today, coincidence feels like the weakest excuse. The merchant's sandals slap harder against the stones. He skirts the main market, unwilling to face the chatter of traders. Instead, he sneaks through side alleys where chickens peck dust and beggars mutter about curses. He keeps one hand pressed to the bundle, as if afraid the jar will leap free. You catch the oddest smell as you walk. Ozone, sharp and metallic, like the air before lightning. That's no ordinary jar. Even the pigeons flinch, scattering from rooftops as he passes. Now here's a quirky tidbit to lighten the tension. In 19th century London, people once tried selling bottled air, literally jars of fresh countryside oxygen, marketed to city dwellers choking on smog. It sounds absurd, but they made sales. Our merchant, though, is carrying something far less breathable and far more troublesome. At the first toll house, a guard halts him. "What's that?" the man asks. Squinting, the merchant forces a smile. "Pottery," he says. "For trade." The guard steps closer, eyes narrowing at the glow leaking through the cloth. For a moment, you think he'll pry the bundle open, but a donkey brays nearby, startling him, and he waves the merchant past. Relief floods him, but also paranoia. He tucks the jar tighter, muttering, "They can't know, not yet, not anyone." You trudge after him through the olive groves. The leaves shimmer oddly, silver in the sun, as though reflecting not daylight but something else. The jar thrums louder. The merchant pauses, sweat running down his temples. He whispers, "It wants to be seen." He slips into another alley, crouches low, and peels the cloth back just a fraction. A beam of cold light spills out, dazzling against stone walls. For a heartbeat, the alley looks like a canyon lit by strange moons. And yet, the light also bites. It sears shadows sharp, freezes the air, makes your breath fog even under the noon sun. The merchant gasps, slamming the lid back down, clutching the bundle to his chest. "Not here," he mutters. "Not here." By the time he reaches his shop, a humble stall of raisins, barley and figs, his nerves are shot. He pushes past startled customers, bolts the door, and lowers the jar onto the counter. The familiar scent of dried fruit mixes with that strange lunar chill. He stares at his goods, ordinary, earthly things, and then at the jar. One pile of raisins could feed a family, one bundle of barley could fill a belly. But the jar promises something else entirely. He whispers to himself, "This is no trade, this is power." And here's your third required piece, the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether tales like this one reflect early science fiction impulses, a desire to imagine ownership of space, or if they're simply morality plays about greed. Either way, the merchant is too deep now to care about genre. He crouches low, pressing his palm, the one marked with cold ink, against the clay. The jar hums in reply. His wife's warning echoes faintly, "Or to burn us." But already his mind spins with schemes, charging silver to let nobles peer inside, leasing moonlight to caravans afraid of desert nights, even bargaining with the Sultan himself. The jar shivers as though it overhears, impatient, alive. And you, caught in the glow of his ambition, feel that strange certainty. Whatever happens next, the whole city will not stay ignorant for long. The morning sun drips gold over the rooftops, but inside the merchant's house, everything feels tilted. You shuffle after him as he wraps the jar in coarse cloth and cradles it like a newborn. He mutters to himself, pacing. His wife watches from the doorway, arms crossed, face a mask of suspicion. The jar hums faintly, though muffled, like a caged hornet's nest. "Today," the merchant whispers, "I must move it." And so begins the strangest errand of his life. He lifts the bundle, staggering under its weight. It feels heavier now, as though moonlight itself has thickened overnight. You trail behind as he pushes through the streets. Neighbours glance his way, puzzled at the awkward package glowing faintly even beneath the cloth. One woman pauses, shielding her eyes. "What on earth?" she begins, but the merchant hurries on, avoiding her stare. The city, meanwhile, seems unsettled. Fishermen complain that the tide pulled strangely at dawn, boats scraping sand where water should have been deep. Dogs whine at shadows. A few children cry without reason. Of course, the skeptic in you wonders if it's all coincidence, Historians still argue whether communities in the past genuinely linked natural events to omens, or whether storytellers just stitched them together afterward. But today, coincidence feels like the weakest excuse. The merchant's sandals slap harder against the stones. He skirts the main market, unwilling to face the chatter of traders. Instead, he sneaks through side alleys where chickens peck dust and beggars mutter about curses. He keeps one hand pressed to the bundle, as if afraid the jar will leap free. You catch the oddest smell as you walk, ozone, sharp and metallic, like the air before lightning. That's no ordinary jar. Even the pigeons flinch, scattering from rooftops as he passes. Now here's a quirky tidbit to lighten the tension. In 19th century London, people once tried selling bottled air, literally jars of fresh countryside oxygen, marketed to city dwellers choking on smog. It sounds absurd, but they made sales. Our merchant, though, is carrying something far less breathable and far more troublesome. At the first toll house, a guard halts him. "What's that?" the man asks, squinting. The merchant forces a smile. "Pottery," he says. "For trade." The guard steps closer, eyes narrowing at the glow leaking through the cloth. For a moment, you think he'll pry the bundle open, but a donkey brays nearby, startling him, and he waves the merchant past. Relief floods him, but also paranoia. He tucks the jar tighter, muttering, "They can't know. Not yet. Not anyone." You trudge after him through the olive groves. The leaves shimmer oddly, silver in the sun, as though reflecting not daylight but something else. The jar thrums louder. The merchant pauses, sweat running down his temples. He whispers, "It wants to be seen." He slips into another alley, crouches low, and peels the cloth back just a fraction. A beam of cold light spills out, dazzling against stone walls. For a heartbeat, the alley looks like a canyon lit by strange moons. And yet, the light also bites. It sears shadows sharp, freezes the air, makes your breath fog even under the noon sun. The merchant gasps, slamming the lid back down, clutching the bundle to his chest. "Not here," he mutters, "not here." By the time he reaches his shop, a humble stall of raisins, barley, and figs, his nerves are shot. He pushes past startled customers, bolts the door, and lowers the jar onto the counter. The familiar scent of dried fruit mixes with that strange lunar chill. He stares at his goods, ordinary, earthly things, and then at the jar. One pile of raisins could feed a family. One bundle of barley could fill a belly. But the jar promises something else entirely. He whispers to himself, "This is no trade, this is power." And here's your third required piece, the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether tales like this one reflect early science fiction impulses, a desire to imagine ownership of space, or if they're simply morality plays about greed. Either way, the merchant is too deep now to care about genre. He crouches low, pressing his palm, the one marked with cold ink, against the clay. The jar hums in reply. His wife's warning echoes faintly, "Or to burn us." But already his mind spins with schemes, charging silver to let nobles peer inside, leasing moonlight to caravans afraid of desert nights, even bargaining with the Sultan himself. The jar shivers as though it overhears, impatient, alive. And you, caught in the glow of his ambition, feel that strange certainty, whatever happens next, the whole city will not stay ignorant for long. By dusk, the merchant's secret is no secret at all. The neighbourhood buzzes like a hornet's nest after someone's poked it with a stick. Word has travelled faster than a caravan camel on fresh legs. He keeps something glowing, something uncanny, something not of this earth. You stand beside him as fists drum against the shop door. The voices outside range from eager to angry. "Let us see it," cries one. "A man cannot own the sky," shouts another. Children squeal, half afraid, half excited, tugging at their mother's sleeves. The merchant's wife glares at him, arms locked across her chest. "You thought you could hide it," she hisses. "Fool! A thing like that hides itself no more than fire hides smoke." The pounding grows. With a resigned groan, he unlatches the door, just enough to face the crowd. The street has swollen with neighbours, fishmongers still reeking of the docks, cobblers dusted with leather scraps, even the imam from the nearby mosque. A few torches gutter, their flames looking feeble next to the faint glow seeping from behind him. He clutches the jar, cloth still wrapped tight. "Go home," he pleads. "It is nothing you would want." A child pipes up, bold. "If it is nothing, then show us." Laughter ripples, and the crowd surges closer. The merchant's hands shake. Slowly, reluctantly, he peels back a corner of the cloth. A blade of cold light slices through the evening haze. Gasps burst like popcorn. Women shield their eyes. One old man falls to his knees, muttering prayers, and in that moment the crowd changes, no longer simply curious, but divided. Some trembling with devotion, some furious at the idea that one man holds what belongs to all. And here's your required quirky tidbit. Did you know that in medieval Europe, relics like saints' bones were often kept in churches but occasionally borrowed or even stolen by rival towns? People argued not just over ownership, but over who deserved the miracle more. Strange how human nature doesn't shift much. Moon, bone, or bottle. Everyone wants a piece. Back in the street, arguments erupt. "It's a trick," one man spits. "He hides a lantern in painted glass." Another snaps. "Then why do the tides change? Why do the dogs wail at midnight?" You catch yourself shivering. The air feels thinner, as if each breath has to fight for space. The merchant slams the cloth shut again. "Enough," he roars, voice cracking. "You will see when I decide, not before." The crowd doesn't scatter. They linger, muttering, casting long shadows against his bolted door. And you, pressed against the shop wall, realize a dangerous truth. The jar is no longer his alone. It belongs to rumour, to envy, to fear. And once those take root, no lock or cloth will keep them out. The crowd doesn't vanish with the sunrise. If anything, it multiplies. By morning, the merchant's narrow street looks like a festival gone sour. Vendors abandoning their stalls just to gawk, women clutching rosaries, children daring each other to knock on his shutter. A pair of guards lean on their spears at the corner, pretending disinterest but obviously waiting for orders. Inside, the merchant paces like a trapped animal. His wife mutters prayers under her breath, slamming pots for emphasis. "They will not leave," she says, "until someone cleverer than you answers them." And as if conjured by her words, someone cleverer appears. A scholar, thin as parchment, eyes glittering like polished ink, pushes through the throng. His robe is patched at the elbows, but his presence hushes the noise. You recognize the type, a professional questioner, the sort who collects riddles like other men collect taxes. He bows at the threshold, voice mild. "Peace upon this house. They say you have bought the moon." The merchant bristles. "They say too much." "Then show me," the scholar replies, "and I shall tell them whether they see truth or trickery." Reluctantly, the merchant draws the jar from beneath the counter. The scholar studies it with a gaze that seems to strip the clay bare. When the cloth is peeled back and that cold, silver gleam escapes, he leans in close, unblinking. For a moment, silence. Then he whispers, "Fascinating." He does not fall to his knees, nor does he scoff. Instead, he launches into a volley of questions. Is it substance or illusion? If the moon is here, why does it still hang in the heavens? Can ownership apply to what was never made by human hands? Now for your historical anchor, in Baghdad's House of Wisdom during the 9th century, scholars debated whether the heavens were immutable spheres of crystal or shifting fires. Historians still argue whether such debates were purely philosophical or veiled contests for political favour. Our scholar echoes that tradition, pulling the merchant into a duel of words sharper than any sword. The merchant, sweating, insists, "It is mine. I bought it, paid in coin and ink." The scholar smirks. "And yet, can you eat it? Can it till your fields? Ownership is a human game, and the cosmos seldom plays along." The crowd murmurs approval at his cleverness, but some whisper the opposite. If he bought it, then it is his. Contracts are sacred. Here's your quirky tidbit to keep things lively. In the 14th century, a Frenchman tried to claim ownership of the entire Atlantic Ocean by planting a wooden cross on the shore and shouting a proclamation. No one took him seriously, except a few confused gulls. But tonight, gulls aren't the only ones confused. The city itself seems to teeter between awe and outrage. The scholar straightens, turning to the crowd. This man holds something remarkable, yet whether it is miracle or mockery, well, that is for wiser heads to decide. The words ripple outward, a promise and a threat. For wiser heads always means higher seats, judges, viziers, perhaps even the Sultan himself. And you realise with a queasy twist, the merchant's world has just grown far larger and far more dangerous. By the next week, the rumour has outgrown the street, the market, even the city walls. Caravans carry whispers faster than camels. A man who owns the moon, a jar that hums, a glow that bends the tides. Inevitably, the tale reaches ears far sharper than any merchant's neighbour, the ears of the Sultan himself. You wake one morning to the clatter of hooves. Outside the shop stand 3 riders in robes edged with gold thread, the kind of men who eat figs from silver plates and sharpen their words like scimitars. They bear a scroll stamped with the Sultan's seal, thick as a coin. The crowd that once pestered now parts in silence, heads bowed. The leader unrolls the parchment. By order of the Sultan, merchant of raisins and barley, you are summoned to the court to answer for your acquisition. The merchant swallows. His wife clutches his sleeve, whispering, "I told you this would burn us." But there is no arguing with riders like these. They step inside, examine the jar with practised detachment, and wince only slightly when the cloth slips and a shard of cold light cuts across the wall. One murmurs, "By the stars," but quickly masks his awe. On the road to the palace, the city buzzes like a hive. You trail behind the merchant's cart as children run alongside chanting, "Moon seller, moon seller." Guards glare them back. Shopkeepers lean out, whispering wagers on whether his head will stay attached by sundown. Here's your mainstream fact drop. In medieval Islamic courts, curiosities, strange animals, rare minerals, unusual automata were sometimes paraded before rulers as proof of loyalty or divine favour. Historians still argue whether these displays were genuine gifts or subtle traps, meant to test the courtier's humility. Our merchant now finds himself in just such a theatre. The palace looms with domes like stacked moons themselves, each glazed tile catching the sun. Inside, the air smells of sandalwood and ink. The vizier, lean as a reed, greets them with a smile that doesn't touch his eyes. "So, you bring us the sky in a pot?" The merchant stammers, I bought it lawfully." The vizier chuckles, "Lawfully? We shall see what law says about stars in jars." And here comes your quirky tidbit. In the 1600s, a German adventurer named Hans Pfaall wrote a hoax letter claiming he'd travelled to the moon in a balloon and struck a deal with its inhabitants. Many readers believed him. People have always wanted contracts with the cosmos, however absurd. The Sultan himself arrives, robes sweeping like storm clouds. He gestures. The jar is unwrapped. Light pours into the chamber, pale and biting, making jewelled tiles glimmer as if underwater. Courtiers gasp. One faints outright. The Sultan narrows his eyes. "You claim this as yours," he says, "but how can a man own what lights the whole world? The merchant opens his mouth, shuts it, opens it again. You can almost hear the ink of his contract sizzling uselessly against the Sultan's logic. The room waits, silent as a held breath. And in that breath, you realise the merchant's fate is no longer his own to barter. It belongs to politics, to poetry, to the endless appetite of power for anything it does not yet hold. The Sultan does not dismiss the matter quickly. Oh no, he savours it. For a case like this is rarer than a comet. He waves his hand, and suddenly the chamber is transformed into a stage. Scribes scurry to sharpen their reeds, poets clear their throats, astrologers adjust their charts. Even the palace cats curl beneath the pillars, sensing a spectacle. The merchant stands at the centre, clutching the jar as though it's the last plank on a sinking ship. The Sultan leans back on his throne, eyes gleaming. "Let the court speak," he declares. "Tell me whether this man holds miracle or madness." First, a jurist in a turban starched so stiff it could cut glass steps forward. He booms, "No man may own what God placed in the sky. If he does, then tomorrow a fool will claim the sun, and the day after, the stars. Law must hold." A poet counters, stroking his beard. But what is law against wonder? If the moon has descended into his jar, perhaps destiny itself chose him as guardian. Do not punish a man for being chosen. His voice lilts, and half the courtiers sigh. The astrologer unfurls a parchment crammed with circles and squiggles. The moon, he insists, is a pearl swimming in the firmament. If this jar holds its twin, then perhaps we gaze upon an omen, not property. He adjusts his spectacles, muttering that historians still argue whether celestial bodies were believed to have doubles, mirror images floating in invisible skies. The crowd breaks into factions. Some demand confiscation, others divine recognition, still others a public festival to share the marvel. The merchant, meanwhile, drips sweat like a thawing icicle. Here's your quirky tidbit. In Renaissance Italy, courts actually held debates over whether exotic animals like giraffes could belong to a person or to a city. Imagine the arguments. Does the giraffe belong to Duke Lorenzo, or to the people who gape at it in the streets? Replace giraffe with moon, and you're not far off. The Sultan listens, expression unreadable. Finally, he gestures for silence. His voice rolls like distant thunder. This moon, whether true or trick, belongs first to my realm. Yet before I decide, let us weigh its worth. And so the trial transforms into a carnival of logic. Merchants argue how moonlight might improve their trade routes. Priests ponder its effect on fasting calendars. Even the palace cook wonders aloud if moonlight could chill sherbet without ice. The merchant wants to scream, "It's mine, mine alone!" But every time he opens his mouth, another clever voice swallows his protest. He stands not as owner, but as exhibit. When the debate finally ebbs, the Sultan smiles. "We shall deliberate. Until then, the moon stays here, under my watch." Guards step forward. The merchant clutches the jar tighter, but their grip is iron. They lift it gently, though their eyes flicker with unease at its glow. And you, watching from the margin of this human theatre, feel the shift. The merchant has lost the first battle. The moon no longer sits in his shop. It sits in the court, wrapped in law, poetry, and ambition, a prize everyone wants, and no one can truly hold. That night, the merchant cannot sleep. He paces the courtyard of his modest home, though it feels emptier than a tomb now that the jar is gone. His neighbours whisper when they see him, whisper louder when he passes. To them, he's both a man of marvel and a fool who let the marvel slip into the Sultan's hands. He eats no supper. He drinks no water. His mind circles like a moth around flame. What if they keep it? What if I never touch it again? Worse still, what if, by tomorrow, the Sultan claims the moon as his own, and I am written out of the story entirely? And then, Clouds roll across the sky. Not ordinary clouds. These are bruised and greenish, like mould spreading across bread. The wind picks up with a smell of copper and roses, sharp and sweet. The city dogs howl in chorus. You step outside, and it feels as though the heavens themselves are unsettled. The moon, high above, yes, the real moon, the one that still hangs in the sky, flickers, not disappears, not dims, but flickers, as though it were a lamp guttering in a draught. Children cry. Astrologers in their towers scramble to adjust their instruments. Somewhere in the palace, the jar glows brighter than ever, flooding corridors with liquid silver. Servants shield their eyes as though it might blind them. The merchant sees all this and trembles. It is because they moved it, he thinks. The moon resents being split. One belongs above, the other below, and never should they meet. His heart races with both terror and triumph. They cannot keep it without consequence. Only I was meant to hold it. Here's a curious note. In many medieval chronicles, strange weather was recorded alongside human events, as though heaven itself passed judgment. Chroniclers wrote of red rain, of frogs falling from the sky, of lightning that struck only churches, never taverns. Whether true or not, people believed weather carried messages, and tonight, this weather screams a warning. The storm grows stranger. The rain begins, but not as droplets. Instead, it falls in flat silver sheets, shimmering like metal, clanging softly as it hits the cobblestones. Citizens clutch their robes, terrified, convinced the sky itself is shedding coins. You might imagine yourself there, lifting a hand to catch a flake, cool, weightless, but gleaming. Is it water? Is it light? No one can tell. The merchant raises his face and laughs. For the first time since the jar was taken, joy pierces him. The moon itself is speaking, it is restless, divided, and only he knows how to soothe it. He swears aloud, "Tomorrow I will take back what is mine." The words vanish into the metallic rain, yet they feel heavy, like a vow sealed not with ink, but with storm. The storm clears by dawn, leaving streets slick with that strange silver rain. Merchants sweep their stalls, muttering that it must have been salt, or sand, or punishment. Children scrape handfuls of it into jars, certain they've caught moon dust. By mid-morning, though, it melts away, leaving nothing but damp stones and bewildered memories. Historians still argue whether such meteorological accounts are exaggerations or metaphors, but to those who lived it, the storm was real enough to keep them shivering through breakfast. The merchant, however, feels sharper than he has in days. Sleeplessness clings to him like smoke, but beneath it runs a current of purpose. He ties his robe, straightens his turban, and sets off for the palace with steps quickened by obsession. The guards don't even argue this time. They have seen the storm. They've seen the jar's glow pulse through the Sultan's marble halls. If the merchant claims knowledge of it, who are they to stop him? They lead him straight to the grand chamber. The Sultan sits in his high seat, flanked by courtiers who look equal parts awestruck and terrified. The jar stands on a pedestal beside him, blazing as though it holds a second sun. The glow is so bright, servants have draped thin silks over it, as if trying to soften the glare. "You've returned," the Sultan says, voice rough from a night without sleep. His eyes are shadowed, his fingers twitch on the armrest. "And perhaps you can tell me why the heavens raged last night." The merchant bows, hiding his smile. "It's because the moon is unhappy, Majesty. It does not like to be broken in two. It belongs with me, and I with it. Otherwise, storms will worsen, the balance will unravel." A murmur ripples across the hall. Scholars in the court exchange nervous glances. One whispers that ancient astronomers once warned of celestial twins bringing ruin. Another recalls stories of the moon as a jealous deity, sulking when slighted. The Sultan scowls. "So you would have me believe you are the moon's keeper?" The merchant lifts his chin. "I bought it fairly. Majesty, with every coin I possessed, surely even the heavens respect a bargain. That lands, even the Sultan cannot ignore the sacred weight of a contract. In much of medieval law, a bargain sealed in public was as binding as blood. Debates still swirl among scholars whether early merchants really viewed commerce as divine covenant or merely survival. But for the people in this hall, words and coin are power. The Sultan leans forward. If that is so, then prove it. Call to it now. If the moon favours you, it will answer. The merchant's mouth dries. Prove it? He has no spell, no formula, yet he knows down to his marrow that the jar is listening. So he closes his eyes. He breathes slow, as if coaxing a skittish animal. He whispers not in grand words, but in the voice of a shopkeeper, gentle, persuasive, tinged with weariness. Come now, friend. You've been shuffled around enough. Come back where you belong. The chamber holds its breath, and then the glow bends. Not much, not dramatically, but the silk draped over the jar flutters toward the merchant, drawn by an unseen tide. Courtiers gasp. The Sultan's knuckles whiten. The merchant opens his eyes and grins, sly and tired. You see, it chooses. The hall erupts. Some cry that it's witchcraft. Others insist it's a trick of wind. One scholar mutters about magnetism. Centuries before that word holds its full weight. Historians still argue whether such tales hint at real science or myth retold. The Sultan, though, cannot argue with a chamber full of witnesses. His jaw tightens. Very well. It may be that you and this object are bound, but do not think this absolves you. If storms rise again, I will know whom to blame. The merchant bows once more. Inside, his heart thrums. The jar is his again, or nearly so. The merchant is escorted from the palace with more eyes on him than ever. Some are wide with wonder, some narrowed with envy, some sharp with suspicion. As he passes, whispers trail behind him like smoke. Moon thief, stormbringer, charlatan, prophet. He clutches the jar tighter, but not too tightly. He wants it to look as if it rests naturally with him, as if it has chosen him the way a hawk returns to its master's glove. Still, he can feel the air shiver each time its hum rises. Back in the streets, people gather. A fisherman tugs his sleeve, pleading for calmer tides. A mother kneels, asking that the jar shine a blessing on her fevered child. A spice seller offers him a pouch of saffron if he will let her stall bask in its light. For centuries, historians have debated whether artifacts of wonder like this were ever really carried through markets, or whether tales of them are parables stitched to explain social order. Did anyone actually believe a man could lease moonlight? Or were such stories cautionary fables about greed and charisma? Standing here, watching desperate hands reach out, you feel the answer is both. Faith and hunger often look the same. The merchant sees it too, and opportunity stirs in his chest. Wait here, he tells the crowd, and tonight I will show you the truth. He strides back to his shop, bolts the door, and lowers the jar onto his counter once more. His wife is waiting, arms crossed, eyes blazing. You parade it now, she snaps. Before, you hid it like contraband. Now you carry it as if begging for thieves. He doesn't flinch. Thieves cannot steal what belongs to me. Her laugh is bitter. Belongs or consumes. It eats your sleep, it eats your reason, and it will eat this city too if you do not. The jar interrupts. A sharp crack splits the air like a pebble striking porcelain. Both of them freeze. A thin fissure has appeared in its side, faint but glowing, as if light itself is leaking. The merchant gasps, rushing forward. No, 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 not now. He presses his cold-inked palm against the crack. The glow dims slightly, as though soothed, but the fissure remains. His wife steps back. You see, it breaks, like any other jar. And when it breaks, what spills out will not be raisins or oil. It will be ruin. But the merchant shakes his head. No, this is not weakness. It is hatching. The words are madness, yet they feel true on his tongue. And here's where scholars still tangle themselves. Was this moment, the fissure in the jar, the invention of allegory, a metaphor for unstable power? Or did the tale's originators genuinely fear some celestial contagion slipping through pottery cracks? The written records are scarce, contradictory, half legend, half inventory. But every version agrees on one thing: the crack was only the beginning. That night, when the merchant sets the jar in the market square and strips away its wrappings, the fissure glows brighter than the moon above, and for the first time, the city itself seems to notice. Windows flare silver, shadows turn sharp as blades, cats yowl on rooftops, even the Sultan, high in his chamber, shivers and cannot explain why. The crowd gathers, hushed, spellbound. The merchant spreads his arms, behold, and the jar enters with a pulse like a heartbeat. The jar's fissure widens with a sound like tearing silk. Light pours into the square, flooding cobblestones, climbing walls, turning every shutter into silver lace. People shield their eyes, yet none flee, or chains them in place. The merchant, trembling but triumphant, raises his hands. It speaks. It answers me. His voice cracks on the last word. The fissure pulses, each throb syncing disturbingly well with the rhythm of his racing heart. Children giggle nervously, thinking it's some carnival trick. Old women murmur prayers, fingers knotting beads. A man in the front row shouts, "Share it! If it is the moon, let all of us own it." Others echo him, voices swelling like a tide. Historians still argue whether the crowd's reaction in stories like this reflects genuine communal outrage, proto-democracy in miniature, or if it's a later storyteller's device, reminding listeners that greed invites revolt. What's certain, the square is no longer his stage alone. The fissure splits again. This time, a thread of cold vapour hisses out, curling like smoke, where it drifts. Lamps sputter, their flames snuffed as if shamed by a purer light. A donkey brays, panicked, then bolts through the crowd, scattering figs and curses. The merchant clutches the jar. No, not yet! His wife, watching from the edge of the square, presses her hand to her lips, eyes wide with something between horror and vindication. A quirky tidbit drifts to mind. In the Victorian era, inventors sold eternal lamps, glass globes said to glow forever, powered by mysterious compounds. They never worked, of course. Yet here, in your presence, a glow truly refuses to die. The vapour coils upward, a pale spiral, and for one dizzying moment you swear the moon above flickers, dimming as if something below is stealing its shine. Gasps rise, prayers tumble, one man faints flat into a basket of dates. The merchant, though, stands taller. Do you see? I hold the key to the heavens, his voice carries, but his hand trembles visibly on the jar. The fissure hisses louder, widening with every heartbeat. And now the scholar's eternal debate takes sharper form. Is he summoning divinity, or dismantling sanity? Is this miracle, or disaster dressed in silver? You, pressed against the wall of the square, can feel it both ways at once. The jar's hum climbs, high and urgent, until pigeons scatter in a storm of wings. Dogs howl. Somewhere in the palace, a bell tolls without human hand. The fissure leaps, and for the first time, the jar groans. Not stone, not pottery, a sound like the sky itself protesting. The merchant throws his head back, drunk on spectacle. Tomorrow, I sell the moon to kings. But you, staring into the widening glow, know tomorrow is far from guaranteed. The square feels as though it has slipped its tether to the earth. The jar no longer hums but roars, an endless vibration that rattles coins in purses and teeth in jaws. The fissure snakes across its surface, jagged, glowing, unstoppable. Every breath you take feels thin, stolen, as if the night sky itself is being siphoned into that crack. The merchant clutches the jar, knuckles white. He bellows over the roar, "Behold the future! Behold my dominion!" His words echo, absurdly small against the widening rift. His wife pushes through the crowd, shouting his name, "Let it go!" But her voice drowns beneath the light. Here's your required odd fact. In 1600s Prague, alchemists believed that celestial bodies dripped invisible essences down to earth, which could be bottled if you had the right glassware. Most historians dismiss it as fanciful science. Yet staring into this jar, you wonder if someone somewhere might have managed it once. And stories like this are a warning, not a fantasy. The fissure bursts. Light pours out like liquid metal, cascading down steps, licking at stalls, painting everything silver. The crowd screams and stumbles, though oddly, not a soul is burned. Instead, the glow seeps into their shadows, shapes lengthen unnaturally, stretching until they blur and overlap. Children cry as their shadows detach, slipping sideways like fish darting from nets. The merchant laughs, high, manic, terrified. Yes, mine. He presses his cold-marked palm to the breach, but the glow resists. Writhing around his fingers, his wife lunges, grabs his arm, pleading, "It is not yours. It was never yours." The jar shudders violently, then fractures completely, and instead of shattering, it dissolves, pottery turning translucent, then nothing at all. What remains is the light, spherical, hovering, unbound. It throbs once, twice, then shoots skyward with a force that rattles the stars. The moon above brightens suddenly, dazzling, as though it has reclaimed a stolen fragment. The square is plunged back into ordinary shadow. People groan, rubbing eyes, blinking at darkness that feels almost merciful. And the merchant? He collapses. Empty arms cradling nothing, lips moving in silence. His wife kneels beside him, face a mask of grief and weary triumph. Historians still argue whether this ending symbolizes divine justice, the futility of human greed, or simply a moral for bedtime that you cannot buy the sky. You stand among the shaken crowd, heart thudding, knowing only this: you've witnessed something both impossible and inevitable. As the people disperse, muttering prayers and curses, you glance once more at the heavens. The moon shines on, cold and aloof, as if amused by the whole affair. And now, as the night folds back into its ordinary silence, we drift gently away from the clamour of the tale. Take a slow breath, and let the image soften. The jar gone, the light returned, the city slowly settling back into its nightly rhythms. Imagine shutters creaking closed, dogs curling against doorsteps, the market square littered with fruit baskets and toppled stools slowly reclaimed by shadows. The merchant lies quiet, and though his dreams may still churn with silver ambitions, the world around him eases into rest. You can ease into that same rest now. Feel the way the energy of the story, all the noise and glow, begins to ebb like a tide. Let the square fade. Let the voices of the crowd grow distant, until they are no more than echoes in the far-off corners of memory. The moon above, steady and full, no longer fractured or stolen, offers its cool light as a promise. It has always been there, long before jars and merchants and jealous kings. It will be there tomorrow, and the next night, and the next. You do not need to hold it in your hands. You need only close your eyes and let it shine quietly, faithfully, far away, and perfectly safe. Your breathing slows, deeper and gentler. The last of the market's chaos drifts into silence. All that remains is the rhythm of your own heart and the quiet hum of night surrounding you. So let go of the fissure, the glow, the greedy voices. Let go of the restless merchant's chase. Instead, slip into the comfort of stillness, where even the wildest stories cannot trouble you. Sleep is yours now. The world waits outside, but tonight you rest beneath a calm and unbroken moon,